Hi, my name is Juan. I am just one reader, and today I will be reviewing and discussing The Amber Spyglass. This is book 3 and the epic finale to the trilogy of His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. This was written in 2005, I believe, more or less, maybe, and it's a book that has sparked a lot of controversy and a lot of conversation since its publication. So I hadn't read this book, this trilogy actually, in quite some time. I think the last time that I read these books was maybe a couple of years ago. It wasn't that long ago, but it was a sufficient amount of time to let me forget about the intricacies and the details, the minute details regarding the plot. And although I did remember the essentials of it, there were many things that I had forgotten. And that is actually one of the first things that I wanted to say here in my review, is that this is a series, a trilogy, that you can read many times over, and it always is surprising and it's always very satisfying. Even knowing what the ultimate finale, the ending is gonna be like, and how things are gonna resolve themselves, it's still quite a journey to experience along with this wonderful cast of characters. So, by the way, this review is going to be spoiler free. I'm gonna avoid spoilers regarding plot, regarding characters, the characters who die, of course, considering this is the final book in the trilogy. You know that people are gonna die, and many important things are gonna come to a conclusion. So I'm not gonna go into that, but I will touch on some of the themes and some of the very important topics and subjects that this trilogy, but really this final book, really tackles. Okay, so the first thing that I want to say here is it's so satisfying. I had forgotten just how freaking satisfying this book is. It is the longest in the trilogy by quite a significant amount of pages. It is by far the longest, and it's like watching The Return of the King in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's just where everything comes to a very satisfying epic conclusion. It is exactly what you were hoping that you would get in this book is here. It is a book that, however, breaks a lot of the conventions of what you would expect from a third book, the final installment in a trilogy. For example, there are some sections in here which are among my favorite parts of the entire trilogy, and definitely some of my favorite parts in this book, where we follow the character of Mary Malone, who is wonderful. She is one of the best characters that I've read in my life, probably. She is a character who used to be a nun, and she was very religious, and we sort of discover more about herself and her story, her life story in this book, so I won't reveal exactly what happened with her when she was younger. But she's a very illuminating character, and she's a character that I actually could relate to a lot. I could really identify with her because she's a character who, I don't want to digress too much and talk about the characters. I just wanted to say how satisfying everything is, but let me say that I found her arc incredibly satisfying because I could really identify with her journey on a personal level, because I too was instructed within the church or a religious system. I was brought up in a system, in a Mexican society educational system that is very religious. And even though my own family has never been religious at all, growing up in that system leaves a mark. And the fact that I was able to leave that system and throw religion into the garbage, pretty much, is something that is very important to me. And this is very personal, but I really found myself connecting with that idea that is very much at the core of this book. But anyway, I digress. So coming back to the satisfaction factor in the Amber Spyglass, it really is one of the best conclusions to a series and to a trilogy that I can think of. It really is wonderful because not only do we get resolutions to every single storyline and every single character arc that has been presented and set up in the previous installments, but also there is more world building. That's why this book is so freaking long. Well, it's not really long, it's just longer than the other two. And you can see why, because Philip Pullman is a master at juggling all that he has to do. He is, as I said, tying the knots of every single storyline and character arc, but he's also presenting a lot of new material. He's presenting the Mary Malone sections that I was talking about before I digressed into religious territory. Dr. Mary Malone is such a wonderful character, and she has some of the most amazing scenes and chapters in the story of Historic Materials. These are chapters that are very slow paced and very sort of calming and very much about looking into oneself. It's about Dr. Mary Malone discovering new experiences, discovering a new species of creatures, a new culture, a new system of life, a new ecosystem, a new philosophy, a new everything. And it's just wonderful how Philip Pullman ties up those sections within the book with the rest of the book, which is very propulsive, very action-packed, and relentlessly exciting. So I think it's a very, very well balanced book because it has it all. It has exposition, it has action, it has character moments, it has resolution and climax after climax after climax. It has epic scenes, it has battle sequences, it has a lot of dialogue that is very, very interesting to follow. Those are actually my favorite parts. And it has a very satisfying conclusion, which is a very bittersweet conclusion. I'm not going to spoil what it is. You probably already know. I wanna make a video about the entire trilogy, and I wanna share some of my thoughts in more depth in that review. So I don't want to say a lot more in this review right now, but I will say that the way Philip Pullman manages the ending, all the different climaxes, and then the denouement of the story, the final chapter, how everything is sort of bittersweetly wrapped up, and then at the very end, it's incredibly hopeful and incredibly grounding. I just think this has to be one of the best endings I've read to a series, to a trilogy, maybe even to a book. Now, this is a series that I grew up with, so it's very much ingrained in my heart, in my brain, in my reading self. So it's very hard for me to give you an objective review of this book because it's like reviewing water to me. It's like reviewing the sun, the sky. You know, it's something that is there and that is a part of you and that is so good to you. And every single time that I come back to these books, which has been a lot, I think I've read them maybe 6 or 7 times in my life, there's always a sense of surprise and a sense of discovery, a sense of danger, a sense of wonder, which I think is really one of the key ideas in the series and in this particular book. The sense of discovery and of wonder, which is really what makes us human. So, to sum up, I would say that this is just an incredibly satisfying book, very, very exciting, very bittersweet and hopeful, and you probably already know this. This is a book very much about science and discovery and curiosity triumphing over religion and oppression and repression, any kind of philosophical oppression or repression, but very specifically institutionalized religion. You might have some problems with that if you are very religious yourself, but I still think that even if you are, you might connect with the ideas that Philip Pullman is putting forward here about uh, discovering and freeing your mind and teaching the truth and teaching children how to think for themselves and how to be curious instead of stifling their questions with ridiculous answers that satisfy no one. Let me get a sip of tea. So I think my favorite parts of this book were the ending, the climax, the conclusion, all of that. Also the Mary Malone parts. I love how Philip Pullman is very good at portraying that sort of feeling of awe. You know, that when you discover something that is truly wonderful and fills you with awe and leaves you speechless. You know, that's something that is very much in this book, and I think he does it really well. I also really enjoy how Philip Pullman writes character. I really enjoyed how he wrote dialogue in this book. Some of it is very exposition heavy, and you might have a problem with that, but I didn't really have a problem with that. You have to remember, you have to keep into consideration that these books are, in a way, a response to many other books, like the Bible and like the Chronicles of Narnia and many other books that have indoctrinated children in faith, and specifically Christian and Catholic faith. And Philip Pullman is pretty much trying to do the exact opposite in here. There is a chapter in this book that is very much the central thesis of Historic Materials. It's a chapter called Marzipan, and I'm trying to find it here to read you some. Oh, here it is. Some fragments from it, because I did find that it was like Philip Pullman explaining and talking directly to the readers and to children reading this book specifically. And as a reader, you might have some problems with that because it is very, very much on the nose. It's almost cynical the way that he's addressing the reader. But in this particular case, I didn't really mind because I happen to agree with Philip Pullman on this philosophical matters about how religion and faith essentially is wrong, and it's a necessary evil that we have created as humankind to cope with everything that escapes our knowledge and our capacity to think, such as death, sex, relationships, the fact that we are always losing something or someone, we're always growing and dying, and life is ruthless and relentless, but it's also what makes it beautiful. The opportunity to think curiously about those things. So let me read you some fragments of it, because these are some very questionable dialogue fragments, and I like them, but I do feel that they are a little bit too forward, just very, very much on the nose. So here, Mary Malone is talking to the children, and she says, I used to be a nun, you see. I thought physics could be done to the glory of God, until I saw there wasn't any God at all, and that physics was more interesting anyway. The Christian religion is a very powerful and convincing mistake. That is all. So, those are some lines that I completely agree with, but they are they almost feel like he's trying to indoctrinate, or anti-indoctrinate. I don't know. So it's just something that you will have to think about for yourself and see what you make of it. But what I can tell you right now is that I adored this book. It's my second favorite in the trilogy, and it's a very, very satisfying conclusion. The ending, especially, is just perfection, and there are many things that I want to say in my historic materials review. So look forward to that video coming up very, very soon. Thanks for watching, and please let me know what are your thoughts on this book, this trilogy. Have you read it? What are your thoughts? Would you like to read it? What are your concerns? Thanks for watching.